You there, what is your quest? And the fool's like, quest? I'm just trying to find some snacks. Have you seen the mutton?
The Spiritual Shitshow podcast with Suzanne Sole, episode 23.
Hey, you gorgeous starfuckers, and welcome to the Spiritual Shitshow podcast, where we get into the utter disaster the healing and spiritual awakening journey can be. I'm your host, Suzanne Sole, comedian, lifelong spiritual student, and I'm sharing some of the craptacular shizness I've learned along my journey that has helped me, and that I hope helps you too. In this Epskis, I'm talking about something very near and dear to my heart, the fool archetype. I ought to be foolish. Well, you can be, and I'm gonna help you see how fucking great that is. Okay, so first of all, like the song says, everybody plays the fool. And it's true, babe. We all have the fool archetype within our psyche. Now, you might be like, oh, okay, what the fuck is the fool archetype? Well, the fool archetype is that freewheeling, balls out, tits up part of us who's curious, impulsive, sometimes too damn trusting, and constantly doing shit before thinking it through. She falls for people too fast, signs up for crap she can't afford, and still believes things will just work out. And weirdly, they sometimes do. The fool is that part of us that fucks up, overshares, and half the time has no idea what the hell he's doing, but keeps going anyway. And y'all, that's where the magic happens. The fool archetype also describes the part of us that allows us to be emotionally vulnerable, which is how we make real, healthy, and fulfilling connections. It's the part of us that opens doors of opportunity by accident and walks through, starts new chapters with a shrug, and reminds us that we don't have to know what the fuck we're doing to grow. Isn't that special? The fool archetype is not interested in being perfect. He's here to live loudly, honestly, and flawed as hell. And honestly, thank God. Now, you're probably thinking, hold the phone, what the fuck is an archetype? Well, let me tell you. The concept of the archetypes was introduced by Swiss psychologist Carl Jung in the early 1900s to describe the universal themes, ideas, and aspects of the human psyche that exist in the collective unconscious, meaning all of us, whether we know it or not. Throughout history, these universal traits are represented as characteristics we find in stories and myths, as well as in our collective narratives of everyday life across all different cultures. This thematic view of our psyche has been around since ancient times. Jung just helped us out by putting a sign on it and making a pie chart. Some examples of archetypes include the hero, the rebel, the orphan, the explorer, the lover, the creator, and of course our good friend, the fool, aka the jester. Archetypes are super cool because there is a transcendent quality about them that runs through us and our collective human ancestry, giving us insight into our universal commonalities and the patterns that shape our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors and world. The fool archetype, often depicted as a jester or trickster, represents openness, honesty, spontaneity, and impulse, and the potential for new beginnings. It encourages us to embrace the unknown and challenge the status quo with humor and playfulness. It's the carefree part of you who shows up to a job interview without a resume, but says, no worries, they're going to love my vibe. And sometimes they do. It's the reason you spontaneously moved to a new city because you had a feeling, but also the reason you didn't line up a job first. It's your spiritual wild and crazy friend who shows up at your door like, pack a bag. We're going on a journey to discover your soul. And you're like, oh my God, yes. And 7 hours later, you're crying in the woods, covered in mosquito bites, eating soup with a fork, and wondering if you can get an Uber to pick you up near the third petrified tree. Meaning, like all things in our physical world of duality, the fool has two sides, light and shadow, ups and downs, positive and negative, or whatever the fuck you like to call it, boo. She's a beautiful, holy, cosmic train wreck, equal parts chaos goblin and divine muse. She can make your life absolutely magical or a total shit show. sometimes both on the same day, before lunch. That's the fool's paradox. She liberates you right after she destroys your calendar, your bank account, and your sense of control. Let me tell you something, Linda. The fool archetype has been making shit wild since ancient times. Like the court jester who beguiled through comedy, song, and story, and the confused oaf who won the treasure with his well-meaning ineptitude. In mythology, literature, tarot, and spiritual traditions going back thousands of years, the fool was never just a clown in bells. He was a truth teller, a boundary breaker, a divine spark wrapped in confusion and glitter. He was a sacred reminder that the road to wisdom is not a straight line and can more times than not be like a faceplant followed by a breakthrough. In ancient traditions such as Kabbalah, the fool corresponds to the number 0, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph. 0 represents absolute unity, the one reality. The fool in tarot is also 0, as it is card 0. The fool in tarot is seen stepping off a cliff with a flower in hand and a little dog by his side. The fool begins the journey of the major arcana, the symbol of limitless potential and divine trust. Or just possibly someone who doesn't look where they're going. According to mythology, the fool transcends ideas of being insulted. He's never clouded by criticism, judgment, or negative reactions of others. He impales the charade of people's personas and egos, calls out the posers, and transgresses social boundaries and conventional morality, flirts with the shadow, making truths about cultural norms and human complexity both pointed and palatable. As Carl Jung said, the fool is no fool. The fool doesn't wear armor, doesn't carry a weapon, no map, no plan, just an open heart and a good pair of walking shoes he found at the thrift store, never worn. And every mythological figure around him is like, "You there, what is your quest?" And the fool's like, "Quest? I'm just trying to find some snacks. Have you seen the mutton?" In Shakespeare, the fool is literally the smartest person in the room, which feels like gaslighting because there he is, dressed as a children's party acid trip mashup, while he's saying to King Lear, "Hey, Mr. King, maybe don't divide your kingdom because of a talent show. I'm just saying." And Lear's like, "Ha ha ha, jesters and their satire." And Jester's like, "Yeah, and BT dubs, your policies suck and your daughter fucking hates you." And the king's like, "Ha ha, classic Jester." But if anybody else said shit like that to the king, straight to the dungeon, do not pass, go. But the fool, he gets a knee slap and a turkey leg. And also in mythology and stories, the fool seems to win the treasures a lot by stumbling along, accidentally completing the quest, marrying the princess, and becoming a king. Meanwhile, the warrior who's trained for 10 years gets eaten by a dragon in Act 2. And the fool's like, "Oh shit, that was a dragon? I thought it was my mother-in-law." I mean, if you're talking about classic comedians, there's got to be a mother-in-law joke in there. And now, even with all those fabulous medieval times highlights, here we are in a modern society that has taken this ancient, wild, creative force of the fool and reduced it to an insult. Don't be a fool. What a fool. She made a fool of herself. And of course, we can't forget what a fool believes he sees. The wise man has the power to reason away. You got to do the voice. This cultural shaming of the fool isn't just bad PR for jesters. It's an act of mass psychological suppression. It's how we minimize ideas, regulate imagination, and quietly police the edge of every dream. All I'm saying is that the fool has it rough. But like most popular hits that came out on vinyl, the B-side was always cooler. Because I feel like the negative view and shadow side of the fool seem to get more of the spotlight, while the very valuable light aspect and positive view of the fool gets quietly buried under a mound of embarrassment. Let's get one thing straight. The fool was never supposed to be safe. He's the character who walks off the cliff, not because he's stupid, but because he trusts. She follows the unknown, disrupts the predictable, and throws the rules into the bonfire of becoming. Carl Jung recognized the fool as part of the trickster archetype, the figure who pushes boundaries and births transformation through chaos, courage, and free ball in it. In medieval courts, the fool was the only one allowed to tell the king the truth, because everyone else was too busy kissing the ring. The fool saw through the bullshit, made fun of the power structures, and made people laugh while doing it. Stand-up comedians are our modern-day jesters. The fabulous, willing fools with microphones instead of bells, putting themselves out there and saying all the quiet shit out loud. They enlighten our asses through comedy and observation of the world. They walk into society's darkest corners, dig around in the bullshit, and come back with a punchline. Like the old school court jesters, they get away with speaking the uncomfortable truth because it's wrapped in laughs, bringing lightness, perspective, and a little bit of transcendent magic when we need it most. But then there's the thing in our modern world that's pretty much the Debbie Downer of the fool archetype. Professionalism. Ah, yes. The age of team meetings and beige walls and slide presentations where no one is allowed to make a mistake. This is where we collectively decided the fool was bad for business. Because God forbid someone in the office suggests something bold, weird, or unproven. God forbid someone says, I don't know, let's try it. Or gets excited without a 10-point strategic plan and approval from middle management. We live in a world that sometimes calls the fool immature instead of imaginative in our daily life. Some of us have confused seriousness with intelligence, and in doing so, we create a culture where innovation can sometimes die in spreadsheets and authenticity is flagged as unprofessional. So, how did we internalize all this bullshit? Because from the moment we're old enough to hold a crayon, many of us are trained right out of our own inner fool. Color inside the lines. Sit still. Don't say anything unless you're sure. And so some of us begin to muzzle our own inner fool. The part of us that dares, that plays, that starts things without knowing how they'll end. We start to believe that being uncertain is being unintelligent, that being playful is being flaky, that making a mistake is failure. But here's the truth. The fool is the part of us that takes the first step to start anything. Fuck. I know. Without the fool, nothing begins. No one falls in love, writes a book, starts a business, changes their life. Without the fool, we're just beige blobs of potential, waiting for permission that never comes. I think it could be said, so I'll say it. It's time to make our inner fool fashionable again. Our world can often feel chaotic, confusing, and like we've lost the plot. And our response can sometimes be to try to control it, perfect it, manage our way out of uncertainty with apps and algorithms and 10-part morning routines. But the truth is, transformation doesn't come from control. It comes from consistency and surrender, from risk, from saying, I don't know, but I'm going to try anyway. That's the fool. And when we demonize that energy, we lessen our capacity for wonder. We minimize our creative instincts and become spectators of life instead of participants. But listen, don't get me wrong, because like with most things in life, it's not all one way or the other, but most of the time it's about balance. And I'm not saying don't ever think before you jump without a net, because we all know that sometimes it can get fucked up. The fool's motto is basically, what's the worst thing that could happen? Sometimes followed immediately by, oh, that. The shadow aspect of the fool is impulsive, messy, and allergic to planning. He might convince you to quit your job with no backup plan, and maybe sometimes you really feel that urge deep in your soul. Or tell you, go ahead, DM your ex, just to check in. Or to buy a plane ticket to Costa Rica because the jungle is calling. Next thing you know, you're crying in a hostel with no AC, $8 to your name, and a rash you can't explain. So yes, of course, it's important to temper the fool a bit with some reason at times, Just don't temper your fool right out of its ability to help you experience a full and exciting life. That's all I'm saying. And how do we do that? With practice. We take chances, we experience life, we learn to recognize times when we need to be more cautious and when we can make it a free-for-all. And sometimes we'll fuck it up, but it's worth it to try and not be trapped in living in fear. In today's world, we need the fool because the fool's fearlessness is fucking amazeballs. She tries the thing. He writes the bad poem. She goes to the weird class with the flutes and the interpretive dance and the woman named Moonchild who smells of patchouli and the 1990s. The fool is the spark that moves us out of paralysis and into possibility. She's the reason you started that business, took that trip, kissed that person, or dyed your hair purple at 2 a.m. because you finally felt like yourself again. She does not give a shit what people think, and that is sexy as hell, don't you think? The fool sees you standing at the edge of your life, full of fear and fake adulting, and yells, "Jump, motherfucker! The universe will catch you!" And sometimes it does. Sometimes you fall in love, or find your purpose, or discover that, yes, you are actually kind of amazing at pottery. Who the fuck knew? And in all honesty, it is true that when it doesn't work out, it's not a waste. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The fuck-ups do you even better than the fun shit. The fool offers courage and daring greatly, curiosity and an openness to possibility. She's the gal at the spiritual retreat who ends up going to the wrong evening ceremony and decides to stay and enjoy it and becomes enlightened. Meanwhile, the rest of us are like, I paid $900 for this ayahuasca trip and she hasn't even taken one sip and she's talking to the flowers. Our inner fool is the part of us that is willing to try new stuff badly. He's the reason you went to that improv class, or started painting, or dated the guy who said he was between careers and living off-grid, which turned out to mean he lives in a van and eats kale he found on the ground. But still, you learned something. The fool pushes us into growth by throwing us into situations that start with, okay, this might be a bad idea, and sometimes end with, well, at least I have a funny story and possibly tetanus. Or, and now I run my own business. I mean, it could go either way, because the fool is totally cool with failure. Other parts of our psyche are like, can we not? I just got out of a relationship. But the fool's like, listen, let's try it. What's the worst that could happen? And somehow, that's when the best stuff does happen. Or not, but that doesn't stop the fool. Like the first time I tried filming this podcast, girl, it was fucking painful as fuck. There was literally no one in the room but me, but I was panicking like I was Cindy Brady in that Brady Bunch episode when she was a contestant on a game show and she couldn't remember an answer and her siblings were yelling at the TV, "Baton Rouge, Cindy! Baton Rouge, you know this!" But I digress, because don't even get me started on the Brady Bunch, because I'll never stop. I mean, the costumes, the living room, that house. Anyway, as I was trying to film my first episodes, I was totally verklempt, like I had no control of the words coming out of my mouth. And I just kept saying over and over, oh my God, this is so fucking painful, while I was trying to film. But you know what? I just kept trying and figuring out how to film each episode in a way that made it possible for me to get through each episode. And I'm not gonna lie, it does feel like a really cool accomplishment, y'all. But I'll tell you this much, it wasn't my inner perfectionist that allowed me to put my stuff out there like this, because she would still have me practicing in the mirror. It was my inner fool, high-fiving the universe while I had a panic attack in my guest room. I love the fool because the fool helps us not take ourselves too seriously. The fool steps back and says, darling, life is hilarious, and so are you, and you, and you, and you, and you. So let's dance. Alan Watts, practically a Zen fool himself, often emphasized the cosmic joke of existence, saying things like, "You are the universe pretending to be a person," putting his signature button on it with his delightful smoker's laugh. The fool is messy, weird, doesn't follow the rules, but he's free and he shows us how to laugh at ourselves, break down our illusions, and occasionally wander into the truth by accident. In a world obsessed with winning, achievement, and curated perfection, the fool waltzes in with mismatched socks and fart jokes and reminds us, hey guys, let's just have fun, huh? So why do we come down so hard on our inner fool? We shame it, we stuff it down and call it names like, that is so cringe, or, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed, or that was so unprofessional. We are so fucking obsessed with being polished, strategic, cool, and in control that we forget that the fool is why anything ever got made. Because perfection doesn't move you forward. Allowing yourself to be the fool does. Perfection tells us we're not ready, that we shouldn't post the video unless the lighting is perfect. And yes, I have been that person. Tells us not to date until we've healed all of our shit, which, spoiler alert, all is a big ask. Meanwhile, our inner fool would be out there posting blurry selfies, singing karaoke off key, writing the weird novel, telling someone how much we like them, and getting rejected and going, phew, that was humbling. I think I'll write a country song about it. Your inner fool wants to go for it. Even if you fall on your ass, especially if you fall on your ass. Because the fool doesn't just stumble, she transforms. I mean, look at Don Quixote. Homeboy charges windmills with a trash can lid and delusion, and in the end, he teaches everyone around him what honor and vision actually mean. And I mean, yeah, he's nuts, but holy nuts. Or King Lear's fool, the only character in the whole damn play who tells the fucking truth. Everyone else is lying or plotting or sobbing, and the fool's in the corner like, y'all are nuts, and this kingdom's going to hell in a handbasket. Hey, can I get another turkey leg over here? Now, you might want to say to the fool, listen, fool, nothing personal. You're just not my archetype. And the fool might respond by saying, you know what? You are making a huge fucking mistake. You're going to regret this for the rest of your life because you are never going to meet anyone like me. And you know what? The fool is right. So why are we so terrified of our inner fool, of being the fool? Because the fool is raw. And most of all, because the fool is that most terrifying V word, not vagina, vulnerable. And we are scared to death of being seen in our messy, flailing, trying our best glory because it feels really fucking vulnerable. We've been taught to equate being foolish with failure. But the truth is, failure is the fool's playground. And if you don't allow yourself to fail regularly, you could be spiritually constipated, and you may be entitled to constipation. Now, listen, we can learn all kinds of shit we don't know how to do. And yes, the catch-22 is that we have to allow ourselves to be a fool to learn how to be a fool. So now you might be like, okay, fine. Are you going to give us some fucking tips for how we can learn to be more open to our fool archetype so our inner fool can shine like the fucking diamond it is, or what? And then I might be like, yes, hold your motherfucking water, Sybil. Here's some motherfucking tips. Tip number 1, try some shit you know you are totally freaked out to try. Like, take a class for something you totally suck at doing. Do you suck at crocheting because you never crocheted? Go take a fucking crochet class and crochet some shit with a bunch of other people who don't know how to crochet shit because that's why they're in the motherfucking crochet class. Or sing that Broadway song you love so much that you fantasize singing about in your Broadway debut daydream. Listen, if you've dreamed a dream in time gone by, go shout it from the rooftops on Karaoke Thursdays. Fuck 'em. They're at karaoke night. They're expecting to hear all kinds of fucked up shit. So the bar's already low, babe. You're safe. Or say, I like you to that person you've been spending time with and getting to know, even if it feels scary. And if they don't feel the same way, just go home, listen to a Joni Mitchell album, and have some cookies and milk, and you'll feel right as rain in the morning. Number 2, stop asking for permission to be yourself. Listen, the fool doesn't wait for approval. She shows the fuck up with her heart on her sleeve, a clip in her hair, a wild look in her eye, and her favorite ugly Christmas sweater. And sometimes it takes time to learn about who you authentically are after a lot of years of trying to be someone safe. So give yourself time. Number 3, get comfortable with being cringy. If you never allow yourself to be cringy, you're not going to grow. The fool lives in the cringe. And remember, on the other side of the cringe, it's lit. And number 4, don't take yourself too seriously. Laugh at your own bullshit. The fool is the sacred clown who lightens our load and reminds us we got joy right here and right now. Find the humor in your spiritual journey, because like I'm trying to tell you, it's a hilarious shit show. So let's laugh about it while we transcend the bullshit. Babe, let your freak flag fly and let your inner fool out of the cage, because that part of you, that's where the joy is. That's where the courage is. That's where the real you lives, under the spreadsheets and self-doubt and perfectly curated profile pic. Your inner fool is waiting at the edge of the cliff, holding a flower and smiling like a lunatic. So go ahead, take a chance on the unknown. You might fall, or you might fly, or you might fall then fly, or the opposite. Anything goes. Either way, it's super delicious to take chances. And the next time you mess up or embarrass yourself because you went for it and it flopped, don't beat yourself up. Instead, do the opposite and light a candle, say a prayer, and thank yourself and your inner fool for being brave and so motherfucking cool. So open your heart to your inner fool, the part of you that will keep joyfully pulling on your sleeve, saying, let's go this way toward joy and fulfillment. Go out there and act a fool. All right, you gorgeous hunks of burning love. This has been the Spiritual Shitshow podcast. I'm Suzanne Sole, and I officially love the fuck out of you. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next one. Roll it, you darling fool, you.